you imagine, church, you're reading this note here, and the Bible tells us about Apostle Paul saying, so as much as in me I'm ready to preach the gospel to you that are at Rome also. Well, I want you to raise your hand if you've been to about 20 different cities in your lifetime. If you've been to 20 different cities, you go ahead and raise it. All right, now, yeah, that's quite a few hands, right? But and I've seen some that didn't raise their hands, but church, this was Rome going to about 20 different cities in his lifetime where there was no internet, no transportation, no that we have nowadays per se, no airplanes, no cars, no trains, no buses. He was going and walking and maybe even taking horse transportation to those cities. It would take him months to get to a certain place, but his desire was to get there, and his desire here was to take the gospel to the people at Rome. His desire was to preach the gospel. And let me tell you, church, Rome was a perverse place. Rome was a perverse place. There's nothing good came out of Rome. It was where Caesars and emperors lived, and they living perverse lives full of sin. It was just terrible. It was the Sodom and Gomorrah of that day. It was the Las Vegas of our lifetime. It was a terrible place. Nothing, I would say even worse than all that. Church, and it is said that in Nero's time they would take your property just for being Christian. They would take the Christians and grab you and set you on a stake and lit you on fire to serve as light for Nero's garden. Many of them were persecuted. Many of them had to live in catacombs. Many of them were thrown into the circus, into those games to be fed by the wild beasts. But in here we find Apostle Paul saying, for I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. You know why he was so strong about saying these words about I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ? Before we find that Apostle Paul wasn't always Apostle Paul. He was a man named Saul. And on his way to Damascus one day, he saw a light. And that light forever changed his life. And I'm sure he thought of it this way of, if it can change me, it can change anyone. And if it can make my life better, it can make anyone's life better. You know, that's what we find those words for. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first. He really believed this, church. He was really, really strong about this belief to the point that he went into Rome, and ultimately Rome took his life. Let me ask you, church, how is your love for the gospel today? We're having a missions conference. This is the start of the missions conference. But how are you treating the gospel? Do you have, church, the key to someone, for the solution to keeping someone out of hell? The solution to keeping someone out of an eternal damnation? Church, how serious are you with the gospel? It's a shame that we as Christians have the solution for someone's life. We can be instruments used by God to keep someone out of those eternal flames, but yet we walk by those and just let them walk into the flames. You know, missions and the missions conference is all about the lost. You know, I would say a couple. When we went to a church, there's a little girl actually who asked me. He said, "Brother, how long have you been a missionary?" And I said, "Well, we're all missionaries. We're all missionaries, but if you want to think about it technically, the way we're going is we're taking the gospel to those places, whether it be here in deputation as well. Let me tell you, this church that we take the gospel even while we're on deputation. You know, last week or this week, I'm sorry, on Monday I was out there in Kentucky. I was able to lead 3 to the Lord, but we had to be taking the gospel all the time. Every day of our lives, we had to be sharing the gospel. We had to be telling others. And you know what? Sometimes the only Bible and the only gospel people will ever read is you. They'll look at your life and say, well, you know what, I want to have that. Or they'll look at your life and say, I don't ever want to hear about the gospel. I don't ever want to hear about Christianity. If that's the way Christian life is out to be lived, I don't want that. And so we have to have a good testimony. And Paul saying, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. It's changed my life. I'm not ashamed of it. You can look at my life, and I'm not ashamed of it. It's changed my life. If you look at it and if examine it with a microscope or whatever it is, you want to look at it, and I'm real. I'm not ashamed of it. Whatever you see is what I am. It's changed my life forever. I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God unto salvation. But do you really believe that, church? And when somebody looks at you, would they really look at you and say, you know what, it is the power of God unto salvation? You know what, I can understand why that man is not ashamed of the gospel. It's changed his life. You know what, I want that. I want it. I want my life to be like that. I want my life to be changed like that. Are we really like that? The only Bible that a heathen sometimes often read is you. I'm not saying that the Bible is you, but what I'm saying is your testimony. They won't ever pick up the Bible, but they will examine your life and look at it. What are they finding? For I'm not ashamed of the gospel. I remember a story of a brother who started coming to church, and he says, when I started coming to church, I remember getting in the car and hiding my Bible. As I got out of my apartment, as I got into the car, I went and took it out. But that's not how we ought to be. Eventually, he grew out of that, obviously. But I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God unto salvation. Let me tell you, church, I'm not ashamed of it. It can change nations. It can change your life. It can change Nineveh. It can change you. It also has the power for destruction. If you reject Him, it'll be destructive for your life. It has power unto salvation. A lot of us, we love, and I'm not trying to talk evil against our administration, which has done great things in regards to politics. But hey, Donald Trump ain't going to bring us, is not going to bring us a better nation or a more Christian nation. It is you and I who are sharing the gospel who's going to make a difference for this nation. So I want to say, church, we need Christians on fire for the gospel. That's what we need. We need those who are willing to go out there and share the gospel, whether it be 9 in the morning or 10 in the morning, 11 in the morning on a Saturday, or even in their daily lives when they're out there working or out there in the store. We need to be on fire for the gospel. That's what our nation needs, church. Our nation needs that. Let me ask you this, and I don't want you to raise your hand, but how many times have you shared the gospel with someone this week? How many times have you shared the gospel with someone this past 2 days? And I don't know. I love that I'm a missionary. I just go into churches. I don't know your personal life. I'm not trying to point anyone out, but I want you to analyze yourself, church. Have I shared the gospel? We should be ashamed of at ourselves if we minimize the gospel. If we don't share the gospel. We ought to share the gospel. I'm not saying that you ought to have 3,000 people saved, or you ought to have every week, but church, it is not our duty to get people saved. It is our duty to share the gospel. Isn't that right? We ought to be sharing the gospel. Our nation needs that. How are you with the gospel? The Bible tells us in Matthew chapter 9, verse 35 to 36, and if you want, you can go there with me, church. For I'm not ashamed of the gospel. Matthew chapter 9. Let me tell you who wasn't ashamed of the gospel. It was the same Jesus who left His throne to die for us. Let me tell you, He wasn't ashamed of it. He knew it was real. He was going to die for us. The Bible tells us in Matthew chapter 9, verses 35 to 36 says, and then Jesus went about all the cities and the villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. And listen to me, church, what the Bible tells us in verse 36. But when He what? Saw the multitudes, He was moved with what? With compassion. I love this verse in the Bible who says, my eye affected what? My heart. Ain't that so true? You and I will never get to experience the change that the gospel can do in someone else's life if we don't go out there and share the gospel and see the multitude that has the need for the gospel. You and I will never have that joy And I can tell you, you that are soul winners, that are sharing the gospel and out there knocking on people's doors, and or maybe sharing the gospel to your friends, have noticed the joy that it comes with sharing the gospel. It is there's a difference, church, about coming to church and seeing someone's life be changed, but it is different when you're part of that and you've been a tool and an instrument used by God to change someone's life for eternity. There's a difference. The Bible tells us, and when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion. Do you know what? And then follows those words there, and he was moved with compassion on them, because why? They fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep having no shepherds. The lack of empathy that we have towards the lost world is because we are not seeing them. We're not going out there and seeing the need of the gospel. We're not out there seeing the rejection that people have towards the gospel. We're thinking we're good. We have a church. We have many churches here in Chicago. We're good. We're doing great. No, church, if you go out there, they have their hearts that are hardened towards the gospel. We need to share the gospel. And it is a sign that we need to go out there and share more about the gospel. That's what we need. And Jesus saw them, he said, he was moved with compassion on them because they fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep having no shepherd. We won't ever realize it if we don't have compassion. My first point is we need to have compassion. We need to have. How can we have compassion, Brother Ivan? Well, brother, I'll tell you, you need to see the need. You need to go out there, see the need. Preacher, I believe you all have outreach, right? And you know, that's a good time for you. And there's a pastor who was telling me, you know, we ought to be soul winners all the time. And I believe that. But there's accountability. There needs to be accountability for us. You know, as Christians can slack already. It is said that very few Christians in their lifetime ever get to read the whole Bible in their lifetime. You know, very few Christians are hardly ever pick up their Bible in a day and read it. We need the gospel. We need to get in there, church, and we will never see the need if we don't go out there and share the gospel. We need to have compassion. How can we have compassion, Brother Ivan? Well, you need to go out there and see the need. You know what compassion is? Compassion is love in action. And you know, it makes sense that a missionary has to come in here and show the need through a video and show their need through words, and it touches our heart. It is different when we hear about Oaxaca or we just see Oaxaca on a map. The difference is that when somebody comes in here as a missionary and tells you and shows you pictures, it touches your heart. It is different when you just see it on a map rather than the missionary coming and telling you about Oaxaca and the need and the pagan beliefs that they have in it. There's a difference down there. When he saw the need, he was moved with compassion. How can I have that, brother? Well, you have to go out there and see the need. See the need. How can we have compassion? And one of those ways is to support missions by giving. Faith, promise, giving. It is those church members who decide that by faith they're willing to give the Lord this certain amount of money to missions. It is having compassion. You know, church, our duty as Christians is not just only to send missionaries. Our duty is to send missionaries and be soul winners and be missionaries in our own town, to be able to reach our Judea, our Samaria, and our uttermost. Church, it is our duty. How can we say that we're accomplishing our duty if we just send missionaries but never share the gospel? That's not fully complying with the commandment of sharing the gospel all around. We need to share the gospel, and I believe we have good soul winners here. I believe there is a need. There's a need for the gospel, and I believe you know that, church. But can I encourage you? We need to go out there and share the gospel. That's what we need. We need to have compassion. We need to have compassion. Second point, and I'll end with this. I'm about to end, but we need to be willing. There has to be a point where a man has to be willing to stand up. You know, we'll never get to the point. We'll have compassion and see the need, and also we need to be willing. Those three things. If you're willing, if you have compassion, if you see the need, oh boy, I'll tell you, you'll be out there sharing the gospel. We need to be willing. The Bible tells us, Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8. Also, I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Who shall I send? And who will go for us?" And said, "I, here am I, send me." Who will be willing? Who shall I send? Who will go for us? And Isaiah said, "Here am I, send me." Oh boy, only if we could have that willingness of Isaiah in our lifetime to say, "Lord, if you want me to go out there and share the gospel, I will. Lord, if you want me to go and surrender my life, I will. If it pleases you, Father, I will go out there and share the gospel." Let me tell you, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the labors are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, right, to send forth laborers into His harvest. A lot of us don't want to go into the harvest because we feel like it doesn't pay much. And today I believe America and the United States of America, this beautiful country, I love this country. This is where I came. I got married and I had my two boys here, and I came and got my education. I don't even know if I would have ever. My mom was actually telling me yesterday, the first time I heard it, I asked her, "Hey Mom, where?" I was thinking she got saved here when she came into the U.S. and I turned around to her and I asked her, "Hey Mom, where? Didn't you get saved here when you came into the U.S.? And where did you accept Jesus Christ as your Savior?" And she said, "Son, I believe when I was in Oaxaca, in the rural towns of Oaxaca, in my little town, my small rural town, there's two men, very light-skinned. I believe they were from the U.S. I believe they were Americans, tall, came into our town, and they gather all the little kids my age and share the gospel." And she said, "It was then where I heard the gospel and bowed my head and accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior." And she says, "I believe ever since then I've been saved." And she remembers that vividly. But there has to be someone willing to pay the price for that. There has to be someone willing to go and tell someone that Jesus saves. How can we ever see a nation saved? How can we ever see people saved if we're not willing to go there? The harvest truly is plenteous. I believe America is enjoying the freedoms that we have today because there was someone, our forefathers have decided to pay a price for this nation, and you and I are getting to enjoy it. But there's be a time when there will no longer be a time when we can enjoy it. It'll be us who have to pay the price, and the price to pay is now. It is time to go out there and share the gospel. We need someone willing to share the gospel, church. I love the song, "Have thine own way, Lord. Have thine own way. Thou art the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me after thy will. While I am waiting, yielded and still." Didn't you love those words? Song? Isn't it amazing? Have thine own way there. But can He have thine own way? And that morning, Saturday morning, when we had to go out there and share the gospel, can He have thine own way, Lord? Tomorrow, when we had to be here in church, can He have thine own way, Lord? Can He have thine own way with us? Tomorrow, Tuesday, when we had to be here in church, after work, you might say, "I don't want to go out there. I'm tired." Can He have His own way with you? Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. We need someone willing to say that. But live it. Not just say it, live it. Take it to the heart and say, "You know what? Lord, have thine own way, Lord. Do as you wish." When we lost our boy, I thought, what are we going to do? And I was thinking more for my wife. How is she going to react? And oh man, it must be. She carried our little boy for this many months. I prayed to the Lord, and our boy we got the news that our boy was getting better, and I was excited. I told my wife, looked at my wife. I'm about to be done church, and taking much longer, but I looked at my wife, and I told her, "You know what? Our boy is getting better. The doctors have said that our boy is getting better. I'm gonna have to go back to work. It's been a while since I haven't worked, and our savings is dwindling down, and I need to go back to work." And she says, "That's fine." I remember the last time I was going out there and seeing my boy before I went back to work, I remember doing this prayer and saying, "Lord, would your will be done, Father? At the same time, I want you to heal my boy, but I don't want anything in life to take me away from your will. Lord, I would love for my boy to be healed. So would you please heal my boy? If not, your will be done." And I really, even before they, or after they gave us the news that our boy had a heart defect, I remember telling my wife, I believe that the rock doctors can be wrong. I never even thought God would treat me in the way that He treated me. Not that He treated me terrible. I've been treated great by God, and it was His desire for us to have a boy like that, and I praise Him for that. It's His will is perfect, and I am thankful for that. And I thought, well, I don't think I'll ever get to a point of losing a boy. I think God has been too good to us. And I told my wife, don't worry about it. I think He's got it handled. And so I remember going back to work, and my wife, maybe 2 days gone into work and out there back in Kentucky, Lexington, my wife calls me crying, and she says, I've just heard bad, terrible news. And I said, what's going on? She says, our boy, I don't think he's going to make it. He just now got to turn. He just turned for the worse, and he's doing. His health is dwindling. He says, the doctor says he might not make it past tonight. And I just immediately told my dad and shared those news with my dad. He says, you got to get going. My dad and I owned a construction company, and so he says, just go ahead. I'll take care of the rest, and I'll meet you out there. And sure enough, we went back, and about the next day, our boy was gone. But I understood it was God's perfect will. I know if I take him as the way I want to do and plant churches, maybe he was going to have a hard time with his little heart. Maybe he was going to have a hard time here on earth, but it pleased the Lord for him to have a better place, a better home, where he could take care of him. I have no regrets. I know we have to pay a price. And I don't know what God has me ready in the future. I don't know what He prepared me for the future by losing my boy. But there's a price that has to be paid. What price can you pay? Maybe it can be money. But also, we ought to be out there sharing the gospel, for I'm not ashamed of it. What price are you willing to pay, church, for the gospel? What price? You know, we live in a comfortable country, a place where there's a lot of commodity. We can grab our sofa, recline it, and we compare it to Mexico. It's not like that. Maybe here we think that there's poor people. The poorest person in here in the U.S. might be the richest in the poorest country in Mexico. We have it good. We have it great. And a lot of times that pushes us away from God's will of sharing the gospel. We're comfortable. We don't want to sacrifice for the Lord. And I don't think it's a sacrifice to serve the Lord. Why do we? I don't consider it a sacrifice to serve the Lord. But you know, there ought to be someone who's willing to pay a price, though, for the gospel. I remember as I went and stayed a couple of days in Mexico, and I got to the home of my grandma, and I remember sleeping in one of those, what we call petates. It's what you saw out there on the table. It's a little roll just made out of bamboo kind of looking sticks, straws, I'm sorry. I remember sleeping in one of those when I was young. And I came in and got to meet my family, and they said, well, you can sleep in that room. And it was just the most, just the bed, or the most dustiest bed I've ever had seen in my life. I remember sitting on it, and it just threw dust everywhere. And my wife looks at me and says, well, we got to push through. We're going to sleep here. Bunch of spider webs everywhere. And I remember closing the door, fell off. The door was almost breaking apart. And my wife, I could think she's very good at this, and she didn't complain. She just looks at me, and I know she was thinking, how are we going to be safe if that thing is broken? But God, the Lord takes care of us. But hey, there's got to be a price we have to pay for the gospel. There's got to be a price. What is your price that you're going to pay here for the gospel? What is your price? Maybe it's getting up in the morning, early in the morning, right, to share the gospel. Maybe it's being ridiculed by your work mates. But I don't know what it is. But hey, we have to pay a price. We have to be willing. We have to have compassion. Those are my 2 points. How are you going to how are you going to share the gospel, church? We need to share the gospel. And so this is the start of the conference, and I believe we need to talk about the gospel. I believe we need to share the gospel. It is important, as you and I know it. You and I are here standing because at a certain point in life, somebody came and shared the gospel. Someone had to pay a price of leaving maybe even their phone, their favorite TV show in the morning, their favorite overtime of getting extra money, so that you and I could have heard the gospel. Someone at a certain point in life came and invited you to church. Someone at a certain point in life handed you a tract, and then you are here at church. We need to pay the price back. We're debtors. We're debtors to God. He came and died for you. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, help us, Lord, help us. Lord, take serious, Lord, the call to share the gospel. Lord, we have a nation, Lord, that's lost. Lord, help us have a burden to reach the lost here in America. Help us have a loss to reach, Lord, through faith.